So today we have with us three of our faculty who have done such great work in the community and just contributing to the industry of leadership. With us today, we have Whit Mitchell, we have Francis Eberle, and we have Jalene Case. How are you all doing today?
Awesome.
Well, yeah, well,
Very good. So glad to have you, and we're really looking to get your input on this theme of define, discover, and develop. So let's get started with the first question as we're talking about personal professional development. And that is, what's the relationship between personal development and professional development in your opinion?
I'm never shy about diving in, so I'm just going to jump in. So when I was thinking about this, I think they are inextricably related, that personal development comes first and then professional development, because it really meaningful development starts from the inside. And I also thought about the 4 C's, and you know how we all want confidence. So we want that confidence in that professional development. But really, it takes some personal development to get there. So the 4 C's are courage, commitment, capabilities, and then confidence. So I think, yeah, first comes personal on the inside, doing the work, making meaning of it, and then figuring out how you want to do professional development that works for you.
Very good.
right.
Anyone else?
I'll jump in, and I would agree, Jalene, absolutely with what you've said. In that professional and personal development is really, for me, it's the same. Two sides of the same coin. You can't have one and without the other. And in today's world, it's really difficult to do just, okay, I'm just going to be a professional on one hand. On the other side, I'm all of a sudden going to be personal. And I'm going to develop myself, and it has no impact on the other one. And so if you're developing yourself personally, it's going to impact your professional life. So for example, if in your personal life, you're working to really improve your happiness or your contentment, you're going to need sleep, good sleep, some nutrition, maybe exercise, or at least keep yourself moving, and a plan of how you're going to use things and what you're going to do with your attention. How do you focus your attention? And if you're doing those things, that's absolutely going to affect you in your professional life. Right. So they really are the same. We like to think that we can separate the things really easily. And this, little device really prevents much of that, because everyone has one and they use them all the time. So you're connected to the world constantly. So when we multitask, which is having to do with doing too much, combining personal and professional, you lose focus and your attention gets stretched and you're not nearly as effective. There's some research that you get distracted, you're in the flow of work, you're doing on something, and you've got this thing moving in you as an entrepreneur, and you get interrupted, which of course you do all the time. But it takes you up to 25 minutes to get back again, focused at that same level as you were before. So you've lost all that time. So I can't see that there is a difference, but they are very much interwoven together.
Yeah, let me pick up on Francis's difference and have some applicability, because I think both of Jalene and Francis have covered what they are. You might, if you're listening to this, take a piece of paper and draw 2 circles and divide them into 8 pieces of pie and put personal development, and think about things like your well-being, your emotions, your spirituality, anything that is in your personal life, and then give a rating of 1 to 10 on each one. 1 would be, I'm not doing so well. That, and 10 would be, no, that's really satisfying. Do the same thing draw another circle. Do the same thing with your professional development around what kind of training you need, skill-based training, conflict resolution. What's going on in your business that you say that's really working well, and that's not working so well. And then what I'm really advise narrowing it down to pick 1 from each. Don't try and do too many things at once. there was a saying by Confucius, he who sits in two chairs falls between them both. So I'm very much an advocate of find one or one in each of the circles and start to develop your personal. And as Francis and Jalene have said, starting to develop the personal will lead you into the professional. And I'll lead you with one Chinese proverb, another one. Learning is a treasure that will follow its owner everywhere. So it's about learning. Development's about learning.
Very good. Thank you all for that response. And thank you, Whit, for those kind of anecdotes that will help us to remember your answers more deeply. Why should professionals invest in both personal and professional development? So it's picking up a bit on the first question, but now we're talking about the investment, whether that's time, resources. Why should they invest?
I'm going to start. So I ended, I'll start, and then we'll go the other way. I think that's up to them. I think, we shouldn't assume that they want to start. They may be in a really good place, both personally and professionally, and things are moving along. One of the books that I read recently called Legacy, it was about the branding and the New Zealand All Black team in rugby. And one of the chapters dealt with when you're really doing well, when you're really on top of the curve and you're beating everybody, it's time to make a change. And I thought, wow. So that's an interesting concept as well to think about. I'm at the top of my profession. My personal life is really moving along well, great family, etc. It's time to change and shake things up a bit. And they showed how they did that and improved even more. So that would be my answer to that question.
Yeah, I think we need to be learning all the time. Things are changing very fast. And so, I don't know what else to say really about that. And part of it is that intersection between personal and professional. You just look at emotions, for example, and how those can take over in your personal life, which impacts professional, or professional moving into personal. And so knowing a little bit about your emotional intelligence, being able to understand how you interact with other people, I mean, everything from particular skills to emotion. So I feel like in some ways we need to be just doing it all the time. You have to stay up to date with what's going on in your field, whatever industry or a product that you're working on, and as well as what's happening with people around you, because you're going to have people working with you, keeping up with them. Yeah.
Right. I love what you shared so far. And I like what you shared, Whit, about, improving, choosing to grow when you're on top, when things are going well. And it made me think that, yeah, that's when your energy is there, your momentum is there. And that's what you want to keep going. You don't want to wait until your tank is empty. And then you have to look around and go, oh my gosh, where's the fire? What do I need to put out first? Starting, keeping that momentum going. And I kind of think of it as a loop. So looping between, you're not doing everything all the time. Maybe there's times when you're focused more on personal development, more on who you're being, the being aspect of you as a leader, as an entrepreneur. And then maybe more, it's more the doing, you kind of do that introspection and growing in whatever way you like to do that, whether it's a book or maybe taking on some new activity like meditation or yoga or, any of those things that stimulate you from the inside. And then let that new knowledge and that new knowing, internal knowing, actually influence the actions you take on the outside, because it's all fun to learn it on the inside. But if it doesn't really ripple out into your world in some way, it's not going to make as much of a difference, right? They need to work together. They're both important.
That makes sense. So now, as we understand the importance of both, how can leaders know where to place their energy, their focus, their direction on professional development? What do they need to assess to determine this is where I will start?
All right, so I'll go backward. Oh, good. Francis,
I'll jump in, break up our little routine here. And I'm just going to be very simple, which is to get feedback. And I'm going to say people avoid that because we don't know what others are going to say. And there are lots of different ways to do that. There are specific tools that you could use, or just asking people, as long as you think they're going to give you honest feedback. And part of this, and I'm going to use a quote now, which is, there's no there's no comfort in the learning zone, and no learning in maybe it's the other way around. Now I've just flipped it. There is no comfort. Oh, never mind. It's when you're learning, it's not comfortable. So when people are giving you feedback about yourselves, it's not very comfortable. And so people avoid it. So find someone who knows you well and ask them, am I doing well in this particular area? And then be very specific about what it is, how I presented that. Did I get the quote right? Or, whatever it may be, that you want to get specific feedback. And it's a difficult thing. Most people don't do that. They just, particularly if you're doing really well, as Whit was saying in a little bit, you don't think about constantly getting feedback and learning about what's there. And you can do, 360s, tools like that, or personal assessments, or even if you want to do a broader cultural assessment of the people that are involved in your organization. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to give you information about how you are doing.
All right. So as I was thinking about this, and I also thought about feedback, Francis, and I like that. I also thought about self-awareness. What are you aware of in your life, in all those aspects of your personal life or your professional life, thinking about that wheel? What are you aware of that's frustrating you? What's getting in your way? Maybe there's something there to grow. Or on the flip side, what's exciting you? Maybe you don't have quite enough time to explore it yet, but you really want to start learning about it, even just a little bit. I mean, I think a little bit of learning consistently has just as big an impact as taking, maybe a weekend retreat, something like that. So I think that's a good strategy. And the assessment tools, the spin I would put on that is, I think they are so helpful in helping you see your blind spots and also giving you language for your bright spots. Because, let's face it, we are ourselves, and yet we are always learning more about ourselves, how to stretch ourselves, where we want to stretch, what we want to be doing. And I think especially as an entrepreneur, you don't have a staff, you don't have a boss that's telling you to do this or encouraging you to do this. It really starts with you. So paying attention to, what's driving you, let's say, for whatever reason, is a good starting point.
I'll refer to another practical action that you can take, and both Francis and Jalene have talked about instruments and different ways to measure feedback. I find I'm getting a little bias away from the 360. The 360, sometimes that has 30, 60, 90 questions, and there's way too much information to digest and way too much information to figure out, what am I going to work on? It's all this stuff. I would say instead, maybe pick a behavior and say, I know that I'm a little impatient. I keep getting that feedback from my boss, or I know I can be a little abrasive, or whatever it is, and pick 3 people that you work with very closely. And every 30 days, say, this is what I'm working on. I'm working on being more open-minded and more patient and listening first, and just ask them to rate you or keep an eye on you for 30 days. And then at the end of the 30 days, get them together and say, what have you noticed? What changes have happened? And what's the impact on the changes, if there have been any? Do that for 3 or 4 months, and you'll change that particular behavior. So developing maybe a behavior first, and then seeing what that does to help with work with the people that you work most closely with.
Great insight, team. What's a good strategy to employ for impactful training, whether it's training for yourself, training for others who you want to work with or want to deliver professional development to? What's a good strategy to make sure that what you're doing has impact?
I think everybody, the 3 of us, just maybe we highlighted it, but let's highlight it even more. And it's called a blind spot. So, when you're driving down the highway, the cars now have a little beeper if somebody's next to you, but they didn't used to have that. So you'd look in the mirror and nobody was there, and you'd pull out and somebody honk at you. That's a good analogy of a blind spot. So one of the best strategies is figure out what you can't see that everybody around you can see. And we've just talked in the previous question about using instruments, using people. So the strategy is figure out what it is you need, and then identify the gaps of where you are today and where you want to be, and then prioritize what am I going to work on, and then deliver the plan that you're working on. But bring people into it. Instead of hiding all this stuff, make people aware of it. Now, the great thing about making others aware of it is they start thinking, wow, Fred's really taking some seriousness around that gap. Maybe I should pick something. So it filters out into the organization. So a good strategy is picking something that involve other people, where when you start to change and they see the change, they think, maybe I ought to do something. And so again, it's a cascading effect. So that would be one strategy.
Go ahead, Francis.
Well, I was going to wait for you, but so sure.
Oh.
Thank you, Jalene. So I'm going to, maybe extend a little bit from what Whit is saying, and that is, I would say grounded in the work that you're doing and the people that are doing the work. So if you're going to do training for yourself, make sure it's connected to what you're doing and what other people are doing so they can see it. So if you're changing a behavior, as Whit was just saying, make sure it's one that has impact or is impacting others in the situation that you are in. And it may be, an interpersonal thing that you're not just impatient, but aggressive sometimes. So being aware of it, asking people specifically in a meeting, did you interrupt? How many times? To look at it that way. So if you do it in an abstract sense, where you are reading about a skill and you're thinking about it in your head, not until it really won't impact you until you actually have to practice it. So the strategy I would use is whatever you're going to do, it's something that you can practice over and over and then get feedback. And we talked about that process already.
Okay. So I'll add to all those brilliant comments. And it just actually occurred to me as you guys were talking. So the way I approach this, because I am very distractible, and as an entrepreneur, there's nobody there to keep me in my lane. So I have to keep myself there, focused on what matters most in my business, right? And is to first think about what I want to improve. So really writing a goal, like getting specific. What is it that I want to work on? And one thing at a time is great. And then why? Why does it matter? Because if I don't have a reason why it's important, if I just do it because I think I should, it's not going to have oomph for very long. And then how am I going to do it? Just maybe one specific thing I'm going to do on a regular basis instead of just broadly saying, let's say I want to get better at goal setting, right? Designing a goal setting system and tracking it. Well, there's some steps I can do, very specific steps to do that, to get that going and to stick with it. And then the last area I would say, so what, why, how you're going to do it, and then who. And I think this is really effective is who can help you, who can support you. That's helpful for me, and it's been helpful for my clients. So it might be a coach, it might be an accountability buddy that you set up your own structure for how you're going to support each other. It could be whoever it is, might be starting a mastermind group, your own small group of entrepreneurs who want to work towards something specific. But getting that support, I think, is also helpful in keeping you on track. And what matters most to you? That's most important.
How long should we give ourselves before we determine whether our approach to personal or professional development is working?
Well, if you get fired, it's not working. And if you get promoted, it seems to be working. So sometimes that doesn't take very long.
Well, that was short and sweet.
Yeah, but you'll get feedback. And I think what Whit mentioned earlier about engaging others to watch or observe you and check in with them. That's a great thing. I mean, I have a peer coach, which is on a weekly basis. Although we don't do it quite as much now, but where we will ask each other our own questions or their questions, and they're holding you accountable. And you actually can measure it yourself by looking at whether you've made progress. So engage others. I think Jalene mentioned that too. So I think that's probably a good way to do it, because you don't know whether or not you're really making a difference or not. Some people say it takes, 6 months. Some people can do it quicker. Depends if it's a habit and it's something that's been with you for a while. but knowing, having some strategies, some specific approaches. Yeah. I mean, I use these systems to keep me focused, much like Jalene. I can be easily distracted. I have to use those or else I go off in these different directions. And it could just be my own spreadsheet, but all the way to the person that, asks me questions.
Jalene, let me just quickly jump in. Francis just mentioned peer coaching. If you're listening to this, type in your website, peer coaching, Marshall Goldsmith. It's by far the most successful coaching process that I know of, and it takes about 5 minutes a day. So peer coaching, Marshall Goldsmith, it explains the whole thing. But if you take anything away from here, what Francis, I think you've had your peer coach for, I don't know, 5 or 8 years, something like that.
Yeah, a long time. And yeah, it's very helpful. And I need that accountability, really, that accountability part. And it embarrasses me. He doesn't care whether I meet those things or not, because they're my questions. Yeah. That's what's so powerful about it.
Me too. I have a peer coach too, and I love it. So effective. So that I'm going to take this into kind of maybe the more internal side instead of the external side in terms of getting fired or getting promoted. So what we're talking about, what we're talking about really with the peer coaching is tracking what you're doing, measuring what you're doing. And I think about really something basic, basic metaphor of losing weight. If you're losing weight, if you step on the scale, right? There's no evaluation of that. It's just, what is it? Yes, no, or a number. And that's how peer coaching works. And then the other part is being self-aware and notice, and I know I keep coming back to that, but, notice yourself. Are things changing? So it depends on what you're working on, which strategy is best. But if it's emotions, if you're trying to pay attention more to your emotions, let's say, so that you can understand their influence on your behaviors, you could write about that in a journal every day. What do you notice in terms of your emotions impacts? So that's another strategy.
So my last question, and you have given some of these already, which is, what additional tools or tips or resources can people take a look at to help them in their journey of both professional and personal development?
Well, we don't have, tools that we're specifically referencing, except I would say there is this website, thecompleteleader.org, which has all kinds of resources, videos, podcasts, and materials, articles, where you can leave with those materials. So the website is www, and this is all one word, thecompleteleader.org. Is a great resource. There are others. It's a good place to start.
Mm-hmm. And I also was going to share that, as well as peer coaching and using an assessment tool, a well-validated assessment tool that we all use, one in particular from TTI Success Insights, that measures your behaviors, how you do what you do, your driving forces, why you do what you do, emotional intelligence, 25 leadership competencies. So a well-rounded assessment tool that can be really helpful, and someone to go through that with you, whether it's a coach or consultant, or maybe someone that you can go through it together. I think that's all I would add to what we're sharing. And we've already talked about other strategies to do that.
I'll leave you with the priceassociates.com. We all work for the Price Associates, and we've enjoyed speaking with you today. We hope you've gotten some practical usage out of all that we've shared with you. So I'll turn it back to you, Davina.
Thank you all. I appreciate your time, experts. This has been a great discussion. And again, any other questions, thoughts, ideas, come find us at www.thecompleteleader.org. Thank you all.